If you've been on our garden line before, you will realize that you'll need to use the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen for questions and comments. You can also use the chat, but if you use the Q&A, that will help us keep track of your questions and make sure we get them all answered. And I guess I should introduce myself. I'm Rhoda Burrows. I'm horticulture extension specialist based out here in Rapid City, and I am going to be your host tonight. And with us, we have Hans Klopp, who is our extension soil health specialist, and Dr. Klopp is going to be talking about manure tonight. Is that correct, Hans?
That is correct. I'm going to be talking about using manure as garden fertilizer. So I'm talking about using manure as garden fertilizer. And I think for many years before the invention of inorganic fertilizers, such as making nitrogen using the Haber-Bosch process, manure has, whether it's from humans or livestock or green manures, has been used as a fertilizer source. And in areas with livestock, such as South Dakota, animal manures are readily available. And one benefit about using manures as a fertilizer is they essentially are plant material that an animal has eaten and then partially digested, and it comes out of the cow, and about 80 or 90% of the biomass of the cow eats comes out of it. And these contain all the nutrients that were in the plant they eat. So they contain both the macronutrients and micronutrients. And in a lot of areas, organic fertilizers are not really readily available. And one of the fertilizer sources that would qualify as an organic fertilizer is animal manures, although there's certain application dates and how long they have to be applied before the crop is harvested. And manure is also good is because it's high in organic matter, and when you add it to the soil microbes will eat it, and it can increase the soil microbial community abundance, and it also can increase soil organic matter, which can help to improve soil structure, such as reducing compaction, increasing infiltration of water and water storage, and increasing how stable soil aggregates are. And this is important because the weather has been crazy lately all over with lots of extremes. So having a more resilient soil can help to better produce quality vegetables, fruits, flowers, or whatever you're producing. And here are some types of manure. Green manure, which there's a couple different ways it is applied. A lot of times they'll grow a leguminous crop such as peas or Harrier common vetch or clovers, and then they'll till it back into the soil, and then it'll decompose, and this takes up nutrients that are in the soil. And when you till it into the soil, you're really only adding nitrogen back to the soil besides the nutrients that the plants may have pulled up from deeper in the soil. So you're not really adding nutrients besides nitrogen to the soil profile. Composted manure is pretty common. A lot of times people will mix high carbon and nitrogen ratio materials such as wood chips or straw or cornstalk bales with animal manure. And this is especially getting to be more commonly used on certain areas because places have a large amount of manure to deal with, and they don't have anywhere to spread it right away. And a lot of the compost you probably buy in the store probably has manure in it. And you can also get fresh manure, which is like the picture on the right, which is just like how it comes out of the cow or horse. And a lot of the manure in confinement operations as more of a liquid form and not a solid form. And the qualities of different livestock manure can vary widely. And its composition can vary widely. A lot like composting the manure frequently causes it to have a more consistent, make it be more consistent rather than be really variable. Like if you have manure with a lot of bedding in it, its properties are very inconsistent. And some potential negative effects of manure application is manures can be high in salts and lead to soil salinization. This would be especially a problem in areas where there's like feed yards that have a cement pad underneath them and a lot of water is evaporating from them. And if you add too much, manure is really high in phosphorus. And if you add too much of it, the fungi that create associations with plant roots will not be as active in the soil because the plant doesn't have to work to get phosphorus from the soil like it would if the soil phosphorus concentration is lower. And manures, a lot of manures are really high in phosphorus. And adding high amounts of manure, especially if you have a lot of runoff, this is probably more of an issue in larger scale egg operations than smaller scale, but it can cause pollution to surface waters and cause algae blooms to be much worse. And that's an issue across the country of applying lots of manure to soils. And that's usually when they get the soil phosphorus concentration really high near the surface. So here's the average. Here's an example from an article I found where they looked up what parts per million of dry weight or percent these different nutrients are in the corn, which is essentially what the cow would eat for food, eating corn silage. And you can see that nitrogen is the fourth most common element. The carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen that the plant can get from the atmosphere and water. Silicon, a lot of these other nutrients it gets from the soil though, and the ones that gets the most from the soil is nitrogen, potassium, calcium, and phosphorus. So it takes these out of the soil and they're in the plant material, and the animal eats the plant and it takes some of these nutrients out for it to grow, but a lot of these nutrients also come out of the animal. So animal manures will contain pretty much all the essential plant nutrients in them. And I forgot to mention with green manures, if you do take green manures from somewhere else, like adding lawn clippings to your garden, you actually are adding nutrients besides nitrogen because that's essentially just plant biomass, which contains most of these same nutrients in it that corn silage would, although it's not as mature and it won't contain as high of levels. Here's an example of a manure analysis that I got. And this is a hog manure sample I just took from a site. I know it's hard to read, but it gives its results of nitrogen as ammonium and organic nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, calcium, magnesium, sodium, zinc, manganese, iron, copper, soluble salts. That's actually pretty high. pH, and then dry matter and moisture. This is a liquid manure from a hog operation, and then it gives them the level of them on a liquid basis and as a dry matter basis. That's pretty common of a manure analysis report you get from a lab. And this is from a website that was trying to compile manures from the Midwest and across the country. And these are the average percent solids of these different manures. And this was the total nitrogen they have. Then the phosphorus, potassium, and sulfur concentration. And manures have total nitrogen, which is organic and inorganic nitrogen. So essentially the nitrogen is just tied up in compounds that contain carbon and other elements. And then some of this is ammonium nitrogen, which ammonium is one of the forms of nitrogen that plants take up. And microbes will break down this or the organic form of nitrogen in the manure and convert it to ammonium and nitrate. And they say that the phosphorus and potassium that's contained as a percent in the manure mostly is readily available. But you can see these manures have a wide range of solids, and it really depends upon the type of bedding and how the manure is stored. Like a lot of modern hog and dairy operations use liquid manure, where some poultry places will have it more of a dry manure with bedding, where other ones will just have it as a liquid. And a lot of time, like horses or in some of the cattle operations where you'd have bedding, they'd have more high carbon and nitrogen ratios bedding mixed in, and they'd be higher solid content. And due to what's composed in these different manures, the organic nitrogen is more or less easily broken down in some of these manures. And general manures that would contain sawdust or straw bedding would have slower nitrogen mineralization than manures that are just liquid that come out of the animals and stored in big tanks in the operation. And on gardening, you'd probably deal with manure that has a lot more solids in it than some of these liquid manures that the large operations have. And climatic conditions such as temperature and rainfall can increase the rate that the manure breaks down and the nitrogen becomes available. So here's the mineralization factor. This is how much percentage of the organic nitrogen will become available in the first year after you apply the manure. And you can see these really vary a lot depending upon the form of manure that they are. This is a pretty confusing table, to be honest. But you can see some of these ones with more solids have a lower mineralization factor, and they probably have more high carbon to nitrogen ratio beddings than some of these more liquid manures. So here's a soil test that I took for my garden, and I went through and looked at the SDSU requirements, and this garden has an unusually low potassium and phosphorus concentration for South Dakota gardens, and it has low sulfate. So essentially, if it says the level is high, you're unlikely to get an improvement in crop performance from adding it. Whereas if it's medium, you may, but if it's low, you're likely to have your crop perform better if you apply the fertilizer. So there's these equations in the SDSU fertilizer recommendations guide, and this gives you how many pounds to apply per 1,000 square feet in your garden. If they're negative, no fertilizer is needed. So here's my soil test results from the 0 to 6. Plants get most of their nutrients from 0 to 6, so that's really all you need to sample. And when I put this in, I need like 2.8 pounds of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet, 2.43 pounds of P per 1,000 square feet, and 3.15 pounds of K per 1,000 square feet. And then here's manure. Here's the nutrients in solid manure from that one, the same extension article that I got the mineralization rate from, and it shows the dry matter, ammonium N, total N, and P2O5 and K2O. And so we have this, the manure is 50% dry matter and 25, we have beef manure with bedding, and so it's 50% dry matter and 25% of organic nitrogen is mineralized in first year. So your organic N is 21 pounds per ton of manure, fresh weight. Your ammonium is 7 pounds per ton. Your phosphorus is 18, and potassium. So if you multiply the organic nitrogen available during the first year times how much the manure contains, you get 5.5 of the 21 pounds available during the first year. And then I just calculated how much you'd actually apply based on applying the manure at different rates to a garden. And essentially, you get the amount of potassium or phosphorus required much well before you get the amount of nitrogen applied, nitrogen that you've added that's available the first year applied. So a lot of times, and especially in agronomy situations, the phosphorus application rate is what limits how much manure can be applied and not the nitrogen. So a lot of times you have to add, if you're growing high nitrogen demanding crops, you usually need to add some additional nitrogen besides just the manure. And in gardens, from what I've heard in South Dakota and Minnesota, the phosphorus concentrations are really high in some of them because people continue to add manure every year. And nitrogen is easily lost through leaching. Nitrate is easily lost through leaching or denitrification, whereas phosphorus generally stays right near the soil surface, except when there's runoff or it blowing away. And here's some values in pounds you remove per ton of produce from different vegetable crops, and you remove a lot more nitrogen and potassium from the soil than you do phosphorus. But then when you apply the manure, you're essentially adding about the same amount of phosphorus as available nitrogen. So the summary is manure is a good source of nutrients, and they have all the essential nutrients needed to grow plants. And applying manure as a fertilizer also can help to increase soil organic matter concentration and improve soil health. Any questions?
And I have a few. Is the phosphorus, did I catch it right, that the phosphorus in manure is basically available immediately? Or does that have to
I
go
think so.
through?
That's what I read, that it's pretty much available right away. And the potassium, whereas the nitrogen must be in like more complex carbon compounds contained in the soil, which take a while to break down, take longer to break down. I just know that usually manure is applied to what the phosphorus requirements is, not in agronomy,
Right.
not in gardens, but in gardens, people will just throw like down 100 pounds of manure per 1,000 square feet or whatever rate. I don't know the exact rate, but just a rate like that. So,
And I did my PhD on mycorrhizae, and somehow I haven't been thinking about the fact that too much manure would wipe out mycorrhizae because
doesn't
of
wipe them out. They're just not as active because
yeah,
when you have lots of nutrients right near the surface, the plants don't need to spend the extra effort to form associations with them. Whereas if they need to work to get the nutrients, they form more associations with them.
if I remember correctly, you almost get parasitic mycorrhizae because they're still getting goods from the plant, but they really aren't helping the plant out, at least with phosphorus.
Yeah.
They may be doing some other things, but
Like if you're doing regenerative gardening, you want lots of mycorrhizal fungi because you're trying
yeah.
to minimize how much you're adding. You're trying to minimize your inputs to the garden, and so you want vibrant microbial community.
How do you know when you've got too much phosphorus?
Only soil test.
And how
Otherwise, I
much
don't
would
really
be?
know. I know I've seen some soil tests where they're like 100,
I have to
which is really high.
90, 80, 90. Yeah. Well, if anybody has any questions that have been sparked by our conversation or have occurred to you as we go along, feel free to put them in the
It's in the
Q&A.
Q&A.
And
That one is about,
uh,
I think the one's about
I'll
weather
take,
effect. The one's
yeah,
about climate and the one's about weeds.
yeah. So I think we'll reserve the weeds one for our next speaker. Yeah, that's Dr. Graig Reicks, our new extension weed ecology field specialist. Definitely someone you'll want to know. Graig has been in agricultural research at SDSU for almost 20 years, first as a student, then a research associate. And now we're fortunate to welcome him to Extension. Welcome, Graig.
Well, thank
And
you. Let me get my presentation up here and going. So looking all right? No, I haven't shared it yet. Bad. My bad.
the little details.
Yep, those little details. All right. So I'm going to talk about spring and summer weed control in lawns. I'll probably be back on in August to talk more about fall type of topics, excuse me. So yeah, I'm the new weed ecology field specialist, just started in January after come over from about 18 years in corn and soybean research. So I'm still learning the ropes in lawn and garden, but I'm do whatever it takes to help you out. So I'd be glad to help you out this year and beyond. So this here. So one of the biggest things that I've been seeing lately is just quackgrass in my own lawn. So noticing the difference between quackgrass and crabgrass. I know a lot of people can get those confused. So quackgrass is a perennial. So it's just like your lawn. It comes up about the same time or in early spring. Your only option to control this is glyphosate, but unfortunately glyphosate controls your lawn as well. So I have some quackgrass in my own lawn. I've been chipping away at it, trying to you have to kill all your lawn and just kind of start over. So it's important to get small patches under control early because this can spread underground through roots and it can travel a long ways and take over a lawn pretty quickly. So if you got a patch of this in your yard, you might just have to kill it with glyphosate and reseed that patch. You'll probably be glad you did it. It might be kind of ugly for a few weeks while you're getting some new lawn established, but you'll probably be glad you do it in the long run. So hand pulling will not work. So the best way to recognize quackgrass is look for these clasping auricles. So where the leaf wraps around the stem, there'll be these little claws. So if you see those little claws, then you have quackgrass. And quackgrass is a perennial, so there's really no hope for controlling this weed with herbicides without killing your lawn. So crabgrass, on the other hand, we can control that one with herbicides. So there's a large and a smooth crabgrass. So these are annual grasses. So they have to start from seed every year. They produce seed and then that emerges the following year. So this is not a perennial. So it's going to emerge a little later than quackgrass. So crabgrass, you might be starting to see some of it now, but it'll be coming in the coming weeks. So you often see in April, there's products out there called a fertilizer plus a crabgrass preventer. So that preventer is called pendimethalin. And right now, we're probably a little too late for crabgrass preventer in South Dakota since it started germinating and emerging already. So that one, if you didn't get it done in, we'll say late April, then it's going to be too late for that. So we'll have to move on to plan B for controlling crabgrass. There are post-emergence options out there. So if your crabgrass is already emerged, you can still kill the stuff. So quinclorac is one such product. There are others, but I only have so much time today, and I'll probably continue to write and talk about these topics in the near future. So you look for a product that says quinclorac on the label. So every time you buy a herbicide, there's a label stuck right to it, and yep, sure enough, that's got quinclorac. This particular product is called Quinkill Max, and there's many products that contain quinclorac out there. So for example, when you look at the label, you can see here there's some different recipes for mixing this stuff up. So the first row here, if I want to mix up just 1 gallon of spray solution, I don't have a whole lot of it. So I'll mix up 1 gallon. If I'm going to do that, I'll put 3 tablespoons of the Quinkill Max in, and then 1.5 tablespoons of a product called MSO, and that stands for methylated seed oil. And that helps the herbicide stick to the plant and also to enter into the plant as well, so it can do its work, into the weed, I should say. So I'll talk a little bit about methylated seed oil in a coming slide, but if we look at the label, it says to apply this product at a rate of 1 gallon per 1,000 square feet. So that's for spot spraying. But it also says on the label that I can apply it at half that rate, at half a gallon per 1,000 square feet for broadcast spraying. So it's important to know the difference between broadcast spraying and spot spraying. So spot spraying, if I just have a scattering of weeds around my lawn, there's nothing really not really an infestation per se. I can just take one of those hand pump sprayers. You see, they aren't very expensive at all. Get them about anywhere and just go around and squirt the weeds as you see them. So that would be spot spraying. So that again was a different recipe. That's 1 gallon of spray. Broadcast spraying, on the other hand, let's say the northwest corner of my yard or my property is infested with crabgrass, but it's really nowhere else. Or let's just say my whole yard's infested. Well, 32 feet by 32 feet would be 1,000 square feet. So half a gallon per 1,000 square feet for broadcast spraying. So if I were to do a broadcast spray, I could have a little sprayer I pull behind a lawn and garden tractor, something that's got a pump, a battery powered pump, because what I want is constant pressure being delivered. If I'm using a hand pump, unless I have 4 hands, I can't deliver constant pressure while I spray. So you want something that's battery powered, and now they make backpack sprayers that you can get maybe for about $100. Get a backpack sprayer that's battery powered, and you can actually do broadcast spraying without having to have a sprayer that pulls behind a lawn and garden tractor. So maybe something to look into. I might actually look into getting one myself, since I don't really have a lawn tractor. So that would be, maybe that's on my Father's Day present list or birthday list coming up. So again, just more on the labels here. So if you read the label, if I'm spraying crabgrass, this Quin Kill product, it says that I may not achieve good control if I'm spraying at 2 to 4 tillers. So there's a little bit of a window there where I probably want to avoid spraying this onto crabgrass. So what does that mean? 2 to 4 tillers. Well, tillers are stems on the same plant. So starting on the right here, see if I can pull my little pointer out. There we go. So this would be 1 tiller. So there's 1 stem. Then there becomes 2 stems. This one has 4 tillers. This one has 7. So these are all crabgrass plants. So this particular product, it says don't spray in this window of 2 to 4 tillers. I'm not really sure why, but for whatever reason, they don't really usually get as good a control in this window. So either get it when it's teeny tiny at 1 tiller or beyond 5 tillers. And I talked earlier about the need to add some methylated seed oil to help the performance of this particular herbicide on crabgrass. So you might have to order this stuff online, but you can order relatively small amounts of such like a quart or a pint maybe. So this helps the spray stick to the weed so it doesn't roll off. The droplets of spray roll off, I should say. And it also helps the spray enter the weed. Most weeds have a cuticle, a waxy cuticle that can be difficult for the spray to penetrate. So this methylated seed oil will help get the spray into the weed to do its job. So just a few other weeds here. Obviously dandelions, probably don't even need a picture of that one. I think everybody knows what they look like. So now is a good time to apply nitrogen fertilizer. So where am I going with this? Nitrogen fertilizer, dandelions, we'll build up to this here. So nitrogen fertilizer right now is a good time to apply, and we got some rains coming later in the week to get that fertilizer soaked into the soil where the grass roots can take it up. Many times people, mid-May is a better time to apply nitrogen fertilizer than April. I know a lot of people like to apply it about the time the snow melts to get that nice green lush lawn in April and early May, but unfortunately that can lead to lessened root development. So now is about the perfect time to be fertilizing instead of say a month ago or 3 weeks ago. So as many of you know, a lot of the fertilizers that you can buy also contain a herbicide, as a weed and feed product. So I know a lot of dandelions in the state might have gone to seed or pretty close to, where the going to seed, where all the flowers have withered or starting to wither. But if for whatever reason your dandelion flowers are still young and yellow, if you're going to put on fertilizer here tomorrow or whatever before the rains come, you might want to still try that weed and feed product to at least get some dandelion control as well. Now, the problem with dandelions, since they're a perennial weed, just like quackgrass, we don't get the best control when we spray in the spring and summer. It's better when we spray in the fall or apply herbicide, I should say. Herbicide can obviously be either sprayed or put on with as a solid material with the fertilizer, but however we apply that herbicide with dandelions, we get better control in the fall because the dandelion plant is trying to send its resources to the roots for winter. So we may get roughly 50% control if we were to apply a herbicide right now with our weed and feed program for dandelions, which is, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, we're probably going to have to make a fall application, but one thing we can do is try to prevent a bunch of those dandelions from producing seed to make the problem even worse. So if you get a chance and your dandelions are still yellow, you might still want to try that weed and feed here tonight or tomorrow or whenever you're going to go out and apply fertilizer before the rains come here later this week. So another plant, this is white clover. You'll be starting to see now. I know some people like white clover and dandelions as pollinators, and that's great. I mean, it's kind of beauty's in the eye of the beholder. So, but if you're a person who wants to get this one under control, herbicides that contain dicamba, MCPP, quinclorac, and triclopyr, look for something that contains that. 2,4-D is very effective on dandelions, but not so hot on white clover. And again, since this is a perennial plant, fall applications are going to be best. Some people ask me about ground ivy, aka creeping Charlie. For this one, a product called triclopyr works the best. It's can be a little hard to find on store shelves. You might have to go and Google it and order some, but that's options are out there. 2,4-D is not as effective on this, and again, 2,4-D is very good product on dandelions, but not so hot on creeping Charlie and ground ivy. And again, since it's a perennial, it works best in the fall, but a spring application, might provide some partial control and reduce the production of seed of some of these perennial weeds. So that's really all I have for now. I mean, there's my contact if you want to reach out to me anytime. I'd love to hear from all you people, even if you don't have a question, just to kind of talk about a certain issue. Get a dialect going, whatever. You'd like to get to know the people out there, and looking forward to hearing from you, and really excited about this new position. So thank you very much for tuning in this evening and for your time.
Thank you, Greg, and we're not going to let you off the hook yet, as we have a number of questions for you. I'll start out with the hardest one, I think. Do you have any suggestions on controlling creeping Jenny? We tried spraying in the fall, but thinking we maybe didn't give it enough.
Okay, so I'm guessing that you're meaning field bindweed with creeping Jenny. That's usually what it's called. So yeah, that can be another tough one to handle. She just replied to see here. And that's another one that you're going to achieve better control in the fall. So I looked that up the other day. I had it, product was best for that one. Someone asked me that question. So let's see if I can.
I know sometimes it can take a couple years to finally get it under control.
Yeah, but any of your, I think dicamba works fairly well on that one. But if that person wants to shoot me an email and I can send a little more detailed response there, I'd be more than happy to answer that. But yeah, it's fall's probably going to get you better control with that weed as well.
I have a question on it. Injection method. Is it good for use for dandelions, thistle, and bindweed.
An injection method, but not that aware of that one. Is that directly? Would you know, Rhoda? What? I've never really
Not
heard
quite sure either.
injected.
Diane, you want to clarify in the chat and we'll come back to you? Well, I think maybe we've already talked about this indirectly. There's one, any recommendations on how to minimize the weeds that pop up in mass quantity? So
Yep.
I'm guessing this is seedlings, but
Yeah, I mean, the main thing is if there's weeds in a lawn, it's just because the lawn's probably not thick enough, and it's just, might need to do some overseeding, possibly mow the lawn a little bit taller, maybe closer to 3 inches. Returning the grass clippings as opposed to removing them from your lawn every week. So leaving those clippings on the soil surface can help prevent some seed germination. So, and also fertilizing your lawn too. You get, the thicker your lawn is, the less likely weeds are to sneak through. So I know I'm gonna put some fertilizer on here. Maybe tonight when I get home, we'll see if there's how much time I got, or tomorrow before some rains are coming. Like again, now's the best time to be doing nitrogen fertilizer in South Dakota.
right.
So it's just a healthy, thick lawn is gonna keep weeds, and it's that way with not just lawn, it's any type of plant. So where there's bare soil, Mother Nature likes to put a weed. So
I see Diane has clarified she does mean using a syringe to inject each
shoot
plant.
up the weed. Well, I mean, I don't know anything about it, but you might get more into the plant, that's for sure. So yeah, I might have to look into that one a little bit, but you can, yeah.
That's a lot of hands and knees work.
It's a lot of work, but yeah.
But maybe on some thistles.
Yeah, some things maybe.
I'll have to look that one up. One last question on buffalo grass. We see it coming up naturally in our backyard along with other types. Any thoughts about planting more of that?
Of the buffalo.
Yep. So they want more buffalo grass as a lawn, I presume.
I think the buffalo grass definitely has a place for a lot of different people. I mean, it's very drought tolerant, and the one drawback, I know it's expensive to establish. I want to say, is it like $1,000 per acre for seed? It's a fairly expensive grass, but the flip side, you hardly ever have to mow it. So you look at mowing, what your time's worth, and it just mowing equipment, it may pan out to spend a relatively high cost to put it in. I know one problem with it though, it's not that great with foot traffic. So it's definitely not something you'd want to go put on a sports complex, for example, football or baseball or whatever. So, but if you have a yard and you don't have a lot of kids running around on it, and it's definitely might be worth considering, or at least try it on part of a yard, see how you like it. And another drawback of buffalo grass is that it doesn't green up very quick in the spring. And I know that might be somewhat unattractive to people that have a brown lawn until the middle of May or late May, but maybe that doesn't matter to everyone. I know people, I did recommend at one time a dairy looked into it. They were looking for something different to grow around their building so they don't have to mow so much. And I don't know if they decide to follow through with it or not, or explore it, but that might be a good situation for them. They don't, you don't really need to maintain a beautiful lawn around a dairy, just something to, have a plant there, a low maintenance to keep some weeds down and look halfway decent. So yeah, it might be a good option for many people.
I think that's it for the questions. So I'll go ahead and share some odds and ends of things that have come up in the last few weeks. We got this photo in the background here of we think maple seeds, but we're not absolutely sure, but anyway, I've noticed out in the western part of the state that there's a lot of seed on trees this year, particularly the maples, but some of the ash as well. And that's called a mast year when you have those really heavy seed crop years. You know, it takes so much energy from the tree that the leaves are developing much more slowly. So it's very noticeable. And the odd thing about this can be is that how do those trees know? It's like they get together and all have a heavy seed crop at once, even sometimes across quite a bit of distance, you know, kind of like the locusts that come out every 18 years or something. And scientists don't know for sure how that's affected. Some of it may be weather related. And we've always said, well, it's stress. And if we look at last year with the drought, that seems pretty obvious and probably at least was a contributing factor. But they've also done studies where there didn't seem to be any obvious stress and they still had a mast year. So one theory that's been put out as well is that maples just always have an overabundance of seeds, but because they flower fairly early in the season, normally a lot of those seed flowers get killed off before they can form seeds. So that's another theory out there. Or maybe it's kind of a combination. We're just not exactly sure how they all manage to do it at once. Coming from a fruit background, I think, well, maybe it's like alternate year bearing on apples. If you have really heavy crop like this year, you're probably less likely to have a heavy crop next year. And maybe they get synchronized by that frost or lack of frost. But anyway, it's nothing to worry about. This I threw in here because we often get questions of, can you tell me what kind of apple I have? And sometimes it's because somebody took an apple from a backyard tree and they really like it, and the person couldn't tell them what the cultivar was. So they wanted to find out to get a tree for themselves. Now, at a relatively low cost, you can get DNA testing. You send them a sample, and 3 or 4 months later, they'll tell you what kind of apple you have. So myfruittree.org is the URL. So if you go to myfruittree.org, you can find the information for submitting an apple sample for cultivar ID. And they've got a huge list of cultivars that they've tested. So they are pretty likely to be able to tell you if it's a named cultivar or if you have a seedling. This I ran across and I thought it was pretty interesting. There are different kinds of bagging for fruit, and those of you who are master gardeners know that I have talked about bagging fruit in the master gardening class. And there's been different tests of them. One took the Ziploc baggies, and this was out in Montana State, I believe, and they got earwigs into the apple. So they get a little bit of a cuddling moth strike, and then the earwigs also found their way in and made a real mess of things. So if you do the bagging, you have to do it like right now, while the apple is just very small, even before it sheds or the extra fruit. Because those cuddling moths are going to be out there really quick now. maybe the cold this weekend will slow them down, hopefully, but so there's another type of bag for fruit that kind of looks like a nylon stocking. And they've obviously found that the cuddling moth would go right through it, eat right through it, or the plum cucurula. And they've also used a combination of this nylon type with the surround, which is that kaolin clay type of spray that you can have, and that did much better. But out in Montana, I guess I got tired of individual bags and thought, well, what if we put the whole darn tree under a bag? And so they purchased this insect barrier netting that might be used for row cover normally. And they got a 16 by 30 piece, 30-foot piece for $50, and they folded it over in half and then sewed up those side seams so they have an opening, and we're able to put it over the whole tree within a matter of minutes. It didn't take that long, so it's probably a time saver as opposed to individual bagging. The downside is for homeowners, it doesn't look all that attractive. It's going to stay on the whole season. So, but you know, if you don't care about that, might be an option for you. $50 is kind of pricey. You can probably reuse it a year or two. But if you've got a lot of fruit that normally get damaged, it would be something to consider. And I'm wondering about haskaps. They've been on the market for quite a while now as far as being available to growers, and there's new varieties all the time. I ran across today in western Montana, or Aurora and Borealis were basically their top choices for flavor and productivity. They tested a number, including some of the Oregon, more Japanese type haskaps. And if any of you have grown them and like the variety you have, you can either type it in the chat, or that'd probably be easiest, and let me know. I have 4 or 5 different haskaps at home, and last winter I finally realized why they weren't growing very well as I watched the deer walk up to it and start munching away. Oh, you need to put up deer fence, Rhoda. Sometimes that can be a little bit slow. And then finally, I want to plug our Garden Discovery Festival at McCrory Gardens this coming Sunday. Free admission. There's plant sales. You can get native plants, and plants from the master gardeners will be available for purchase. There's like 14 or so booths from all kinds of different organizations, and you can do some hands-on things, as well as tour the garden and listen to various presentations. So I'd go if I was on the east side of the state, but those of you who are, you'll not want to miss that. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing and take some of the questions. Rhubarb bolting, it's the time of year for that. It might have been kind of stressed, as you mentioned, from last year, from the heat and drought, and if you're in the western side of the state, or most of the state, I guess, got into the 90s the past few days. Those poor plants don't know what to do. Any measures you can take now? You can pull off the stem, the flowering stem, if you want. Otherwise, just make sure you can give it some extra water. Make sure that it's is staying a little bit more moist. If your subsoil isn't have much water, you might want to try to bring that up some, mulch around it. And usually we would recommend a little bit of manure in the fall. You don't want to do that in the spring unless it's composted manure. Okay. Suggestions about how to proceed when a dead bat is found in an outbuilding. Are you concerned just with them living in the building or with whether or not they might have West Nile or some other disease? But I'd call your local Department of Natural Resources and check in with them. Perennial dieback and found in large numbers, some kind of larvae or egg in the root area. How to submit samples. I'm going to type my email in the chat. I forgot to put it in my slide deck. And you can email me, or you can go on the extension.sdstate.edu page and go to the garden, and then it has an area about garden problems or something like that. And you can make contact with someone there. You can ask a question and somebody will get back to you. So that's always available to you. Let's see. I think that's it, unless I've missed anything. Somebody may get Hascap fruit this year. Good luck. It should be a good year for it. I know mine are in full bloom this week, so we'll see. And with that, I want to thank you for coming tonight, and a special thank you to Dr. Klopp and to Dr. Reicks. Remember that you can find this and previous episodes of Garden Hour on the SDSU Extension YouTube channel. Join us next week at this same time. One of our guests will be Jason Shook to talk about his tribal gardening programs. Dr. Lang and Dr. Ball will be on there too to field your questions about both herbaceous and woody plants. And in the meantime, don't forget that you can use the garden hotline. Again, extension.sdstate.edu. Click on the gardens and you'll come to that. So with that, I bid everyone a good night.